An interesting part about Trackmania, anytime a new map is created, a leaderboard is created with it. And hundreds of thousands of maps later, there are lots of world records to go around. Well, on the LOLMAPS server, we've got about 8,500 maps. And if you just take a look at the top players on the server, a huge portion of those records are taken by just a few players. Fixor over here practically owns the server, but there's also just so many really high-level players throughout this list. And if you're ever trying to set a record on a map, these are the people you're going up against on every map. But if you scroll all the way back to page 4, that's where you'll find my name, with 33 first place spots. Now, I have over 2,000 hours played in Trackmania, but a lot of the guys I'm going up against have over 10,000 hours played in this game, so I'm never going to be able to compete with them in all these full speed or tech maps. Now, I went through and broke down all of the rank 1s I have on the server, so 6 of these are basically brand new maps, the kinds that haven't really had time to establish much of a leaderboard, so they're not really anything too special. Then 8 of these are from khaki maps, which again, I feel like all that really matters is that you finish, so it's not really the biggest deal to have the fastest time on these. And then 6 of these are actually just bugged times. It's kind of complicated to explain, but basically my time from one map ends up landing on the leaderboard of another map. Believe it or not, I did not beat Fixor's time by 10 seconds on this map. However, the other 13 rank 1s that I have are the maps we're going to be looking at today. Starting with Fix Mix number 1. Now, this is a very silly map, so there's one checkpoint, and you start inside of the checkpoint. It's turned on its side, and you have to find a way to, I don't know, lift up your nose or something so that you can trigger the checkpoint as you climb over it and drive into the finish. It's really awkward to play, not really the most enjoyable map, and to be honest, I just got really lucky while I was playing this. I drove over this little bump, and my tail bumped just high enough to trigger the checkpoint so I could drive straight into the finish line, giving me a rank 1. Unfortunately, I can't even look at the replay of this map, because apparently whenever you have runs that are too short, it just kind of breaks the replay. So this is basically what I see. Which leads us to High Effort Tube Map. Now, I've talked about tube launcher maps a few times on this channel, and for some reason, I just have a really good track record of getting really lucky on these maps, I guess. So in this one, you just launch out into a field, there's a bunch of just grassy hills, and the finish line is way back into the right. And the only way to get a good time on this is to just get a really nice landing where you can bug slide or nose bug, whatever you have to do to launch yourself way in that direction. And if you're really lucky, you'll get a run that looks something like this. Now right there, that was a 12.7 run. Technically, if I didn't already have the local record, then that would have been it. But MTH over here, whom I'm just going to refer to as Meth, has been trying to beat my time for a while on this map. So this is his replay of what his 12.7 looked like. But now it's time to show what my 12.1 run looked like. You know, one of the reasons I really enjoy this map is just because it teaches you that there's so many ways to bug slide. Like, you could land flat on your side and do a grass slide like that, or you could land on just one back wheel, or one front wheel, or just your nose. Like, there's so many ways for you to just flick yourself to the side. This is the kind of map that you're either going to be really frustrated with, or you're going to see some very satisfying runs on. But now let's move on to a map that's just called Sick Map. You know, I always call these maps just 100% luck-based, but if I'm getting top ranks on so many of them, I mean, I guess maybe there is a little bit of skill involved. So in this one, you've got to launch yourself way out in the distance and try and land in this tunnel. There's a checkpoint with a bunch of boosters inside, and then you just ride this tunnel back around and bounce into the finish. But I still think there's a lot of room for improvement on this map, because even on my world record replay, I don't think I even landed this as good as I could have, so I don't think that this record is as safe as the other one. Moving on to the third tube launcher map on this list. Now this one I only have the LOLMAPS record. I'm actually in 5th place overall, but this one's actually just hard to pull off correctly. So I mean, like the title suggests, you've got to be able to do grass slide into the launcher and then send yourself out into the finish line. And it's just really tricky to line up your car to get into the booster. Looks like something's going wrong with Meth. He's just floating here in the sky. He must have disconnected. Now this next one, I'm only going to show you my replay because last time I tried juking it, the server crashed. I'm not sure entirely if it was this map's fault, but I don't want to try again. But I guess this one I just got a really lucky landing because I was not expecting to see first place. Now we have a map called Back to Back. This is kind of a weird one. It's just a long series of kind of awkward stunts. I remember the first time time I played this, I was just struggling to get a finish. And then when I finally did get the finish, I was surprised to see it was actually rank 1. Back then, it was the world record, but looks like it has been beaten on another server. So I don't have the Trackmania record, I only have the local record on this one. Okay, looks like I now don't have the local record either. Yeah, again, I don't think this one's even had very much competition, because even in my runs right here, I almost beat my personal best pretty easily. Alright, this next one has kind of a funny story. So ever since I finished getting in the top 400 on every single map, it's not only is there a way to look at the maps you're not ranked on at all, there's also a way to just sort your ranking on every map, so that you can look at your worst ranks and try to improve on them. So I opened up this map, and I was ranked 391. It's a pretty annoying map to play, just the way that you've got to sort of slip in between these two ramps, and then just drive an awkward line around. And I was having a really hard time improving my personal best. I was still stuck at rank 391. And so somebody pointed out, like, hey, maybe there's a shortcut where you gotta bounce over this wall. And so I thought, oh yeah, that's probably what everybody is doing. I probably have to do that just to get a better rank. So I just started grinding it out, driving into this bump over and over again. And then I got one clean run where I bounced into the finish line. I'm thinking, alright, finally, I'm gonna be out of rank 391. And it ended up being the world record. Although I almost just lost rank 1 on this map too during the recording. Alright, let's take a look at the map called Short Toy 078. Now this is just a pretty generic mini full speed map. These are not usually the kind of maps that I'm ever going to get a record on. Anything that involves just regular driving with normal mechanics, those maps are pretty much always going to be taken by the top level players. And while, yes, somebody did go and beat this record on another server, it was still a very big surprise when I saw that rank 1 on this map. And here's one more sort of boring traditional style map. I must have just gotten really lucky with the lines I drove, because there's actually a pretty noticeable gap between first and second on this one. But it's kind of weird whenever you go up against your personal best and you can't even come close. Maybe that's just a sign that you got kind of lucky back then. But yeah, all these basic little mini tech maps are not the records that I'm really the most proud of. They're definitely the least interesting to talk about anyway. Now, I typically don't like to go hunting world records on maps. However, this one map is the exception. So a lot of the records I've gotten have just been sort of flukes, just one-offs I accidentally got at one time while playing for a few minutes. But the map, Woohoo, is very different. So it was actually a few years ago that somebody juked this map. I thought it was a pretty cool map, and I ended up getting rank 3 on the local records. Now at that point, I kind of just sit back and say, well, that's as good as I'm ever gonna get, except that a couple minutes later, I ended up getting rank 1. Now I actually got this record way back in March of 2022, but over time, that record did get beaten. So after a year, I had the local 3 and the Deddy 4 on this map, and so that's when I decided I needed to take it back. I typically like maps that have more stunt elements to them, and so I've always just been a big fan of this barrel roll. I think barrel rolls are one of my more unique strengths. But then 16 months after I initially set the world record, I took it back. As far as records go, this is one of my more proud ones, but it is probably not the craziest thing I've ever done. Now, I have no idea how I managed to pull this one off. So this map is called Short and Eerie number 2, and honestly, it's kind of a stupid map. So you go down the hill, and there's a really awkward loop you've got to go through, and then after the loop, there's a bunch of poles in the way which come out of nowhere, and then just another boring loop after that. Well, with this loop being so wide open, I just had to come up with some way to cut past it. And like I mentioned on the last map, barrel rolls have become kind of my specialty, so I kept trying to do a shortcut. And while I could never quite get a clean barrel roll, I pulled off something even more impressive to get the world record. Now, whenever a new map gets added to the server and I end up getting the rank 1, it's usually safe to assume that when I come back to this map the next time, I'm probably not going to still have rank 1. But the next map actually surprised me that nobody's taken it from me yet. This one's called Just Another Loop Cut. Now, this map is actually pretty weird, so you've got to drive around this bend, go off this ramp, but land sideways up against a magnetic wall, and then flip off of that using the magnetic gravity, landing onto another platform and driving through the finish. And when this map was first added, it was really back and forth between me and some other guys. We just kept fighting over the first place spot before I took it in the end. And so coming back to it, I'm pretty amazed that nobody's taken it from me yet. But I mean, I feel like just making this video is putting a big target on my back for all of these records. And there goes another one. Looks like I'm down to just 31 now. And then of course, we also can't forget the map Pardon Me. I mean, this is truly the biggest skill-based map on the server. You can't really argue with that 0.9 record. But there's one more map that I want to show that I just have a lot of fun with. This one's called Mini Lol Fun 4. Now this map gets a lot of love and a lot of hate. it's a pretty typical downhill map. There's really not much to explain with it. You just gotta come up with a really clean route of jumping from one road to the next without hitting a wall somewhere. And even though I have the LOLMAPS record on this map, I'm still so far away from the world record. This is one map that I like to hunt quite a bit, just because I think there is so much potential that I'm missing out on here. I've never gotten a perfectly clean run yet, and I'm definitely aiming for a 13-second run. In fact, I think even 12 seconds might even be possible if you're really lucky. But amazingly, even though the map seems like it's very luck-based, I've probably had at least 10 runs by now that were less than 16 seconds, which would land all of them in the top 5 LOLMAPS records. But one day I will get a clean enough run to take the world record off of this one.